you know where you are in the middle of a journey? You use a map. I love good maps. Today we're going to look at how a good map gives us a picture of a whole journey. And having a picture of our journeys can be incredibly important if we're going to make it to the end. David's journey, our journey, Jesus' journey on the next episode of Crossroads Online.
Hey everybody, my name is Evan.
And my name is Barrick, and welcome to Crossroads Online. We're so glad that you chose to join us this morning. And if this is your first time here, we would love to connect with you. The best way for you to do that is by texting the number on the screen right now. And if this is not your first time, you regularly come hang out with us online here at Crossroads. We would love if you would share this live stream, however you're watching it with someone. You never know how a simple invitation might just change somebody's life. So we'd love if you'd share our stream now. And Evan, what do we got that we'd like to tell the fine people about?
Well, we've been taking steps for the past 6 months to follow Jesus, because if you're not taking steps, you can't really follow anybody.
Nope.
And so because we've been taking steps to deepen your relationship with Jesus, and wide steps to kind of share that faith and bring other people into that faith, we've been giving you a step of the week, a step that you can take to either take a deep or a wide step in your faith. And so today's step of the week, or this week's step of the week, is get baptized.
Yes.
All right, and we have a really good opportunity coming up August 2nd. Now, baptism is just this way to say that God's been moving in my life, and I want to share this with everyone else, and especially here in our church congregation, saying, hey, I've given my life to Jesus, I'm following Jesus, and I want everyone here to know that.
Yep.
And so that's what baptism is. And August 2nd, we're going to have this opportunity where we're going to have a celebration. We're going to do baptisms, we're going to have some food, and there's just going to be a big celebration. It's going to be outside. It's going to be
a pool.
Pool. Yeah, it's going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
And so if you are interested, if that's something you feel like God is speaking to you, or you feel like God's been moving in your life, August 2nd, we are having our baptisms. You can go to our Follow website and click Step of the Week, and we'll take you to a form so we can talk to you about it.
Absolutely. And we have also the backpack and school supply drive happening now, and we would love for you to participate. It's an awesome way that we get to serve our community, is to be able to give backpacks and school supplies to those in our community, in the community of Baltimore, that may not be able to afford these things, and to make sure that we help kids be able to have a better education because of the things that we have, and be able to give back to our community. So if you would like to participate, you can find more details on our website. There's an Amazon link. You can hit that, or if you'd like to drop stuff off in person, you can also do that. But all the supplies that we need are on our website, so make sure to check that out, crossroads140.com. And now we're going to move into the next part of our service. And wherever you're at, whether this is a season of celebration and joy, or it's a season of challenge, of hardship, know that God is able to use all of it to help us to grow closer, to be like Him and with Him. And so this moment is an act of worship to say, God, I am trusting you in this season, whatever this season is. God, I am trusting you to use it to help me be more like you and to be better at being with you. So now worship with us.
God of Abraham, you're the God of covenant, of faithful promises. Time and time again, you have proven you do just what you say. Till the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. Yeah, God, from age to age, though the earth may pass away, your word remains the same. Yeah, your history can prove there's nothing you can't do. You're faithful and true. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting sun, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. He'll never let me down. I'll still bless you when I'm in the middle of the storm, in the middle of my trial. I'll still bless you when I'm in the middle of the road and I don't know which way to go. I still bless you. I got a reason to bless your name. You've been faithful. You've been faithful. I'll still bless you. Great is your faithfulness. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting sun, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me.
We invite you every time you join us to join us in all of the ways that we participate in the life of the church. If you're online or if you're sometimes in person, sometimes online, this is the point where we invite you to be a part of generosity, of giving as a sign of our love and dependence, our gratitude to God for what He's given to us. We pause every week and remind ourselves that giving is part of our relationship with our Heavenly Father. I invite you to give as a part of that. There's a lot of different ways to give, even if you're not here in person. We'll put those on the screen. And I want you to know that we value every single gift that comes in. Our pledge to you is that we are going to steward those well, and that your gift will be used to further God's kingdom. Thanks in advance for your generosity. Welcome again, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on Crossroads Online. I'm Reid Robinette. I'm the senior pastor here at Crossroads. And this summer, we are working our way through a study of the life of David. We've entitled it After God's Own Heart because that's the way that the Bible describes David. In fact, in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, he's referred to in this way. In Acts chapter 13, verse 22, this is what we read. After removing Saul, that was the king before David, God, made David their king. God testified concerning David, I found David, son of Jesse, a man after my own heart. He will do everything I want him to do. Now, the truth is that David did some things that God did not want him to do as well, which I think gives us some hope that our hearts could be fashioned after God's heart. And it doesn't mean we got to be perfect. It means we have to be on a journey like David was. So we're going to pick up today with part of that journey. I'm going to call it his formation, the formative parts of David's journey after he defeated Goliath, but before he ever got to the palace. Saul was still king, still acting like king, even though God had withdrawn his blessing from him. But to get us started, I want to ask a question, or maybe give a confession, or maybe a little bit of both. The question is this. Is anybody a map person? A map, M-A-P. I love a good map. That's my confession to you. Now, maps have changed in our day. Most of it's GPS. That's wonderful. But GPS sort of gives you turn-by-turn navigation, which is very helpful. But it sometimes doesn't give you the map experience. I used to remember, anybody remember the booklets that you would get a booklet for the Baltimore metropolitan area, and you would be tracing and then you would get to like the bottom of the page and it would say, turn to page 46. And you go like this and you find your thing on there. The good old days of the maps are far behind us. I used to love in school if they would give you a book that had a fold-out map. That was really cool. And you could sometimes, just for fun, I look on my iPhone and I just pull up a map of somewhere, and I just zoom in, I zoom out. I'm confessing to you, I'm a map guy. But you know what? Maps are good in the whole sense of a map to give you perspective. Sometimes you need the whole picture in order to gain the correct perspective. Let me give you an illustration. I've been to Africa, and specifically to the country of Ghana in Africa several times, half a dozen times. I'm looking forward to going back. We have a great partner there. But when I tell people that I'm going to Africa, and I've been to Africa, the number one question that I get is, what animals did you see? And then I just sort of say, you don't have a good perspective on what I mean when I say I've been to Africa. So let me show you. I need a map. Here's the map of where I go in Africa. The Agape House Church is our partner. And this is in a neighborhood called East Legon. And they have great stuff going on there. When I go, I do some teaching. I preach on the Sundays and am involved in their church staff and that kind of thing. And then up here at the top of the map is the AH Hotel and Conference Center. And that's where I stay. And so when I go to Africa, this is where I go. I go from the hotel to the church, and then I go back. That's when I say I go to Africa, that's what I do. And so the only animals that I see are along this like Pawpaw Street. And there's a few dogs and things like that. But that's not what people mean. They think I'm going to see giraffes and elephants or something like that. There's no giraffes and elephants in this little. Does that give you a perspective? Well, a little. But what if we zoomed out one slide? This will give you a bigger picture of the capital of Ghana, is the city of Accra. This is the Atlantic Ocean right there. And here's that little segment that I was showing you before. This is where I go. That gives you a little more perspective, but still, you can't even tell what country you're in. We zoom out one more, and you see the whole country of Ghana. Now, I couldn't have found Ghana on a map 8 years ago, but I'm very familiar with it now. And all the way down here at the bottom is Accra. And that little dot there is where the church is and where the hotel is. And it's part of this whole country. This is Lake Volta, largest man-made lake in the continent of Africa. But you still might not be oriented in terms of where Ghana is in Africa. So zoom out one more time. This is the west coast of Africa, sub-Saharan, the Sahara Desert up here, sub-Saharan West Africa, and this is the country of Ghana. Here's Nigeria, there's Ivory Coast, there's Sierra Leone, other places that are playing in the World Cup right now. And here's Ghana, and here's Accra, and there's the little tiny circle where I go when I go to Africa. Now, you might say, I need the whole picture. One more zoom out gives us, here's the whole continent of Africa. And here's Ghana all the way over here. There's 54 countries in the continent of Africa, and there's Ghana, and there's Accra, and there's the little tiny circle. That's where I go. So sometimes a map is a way to give you an orientation, to give you a perspective of what someone is talking about. Now, when I say I'm going to Africa, if you paid attention during the map session, you would have perspective on what I meant when I said I'm going to Africa. Now, I'll tell you another thing that maps are good for. Maps are great at displaying a journey from one end to the next, not just the next turn, but a map often can give you the whole journey. Journey is one of the primary ways that our faith and growing our faith is referred to in the scripture. Especially in the Old Testament, there are journeys that are used as metaphors for growing in faith. And there's one journey in particular that is more important than the rest. And it is the journey from Egypt to the Promised Land. You might remember the story that the people of Israel, God's chosen people to bless the rest of the world, were enslaved in Egypt. And God raises up a leader, Moses, and Moses goes. And he says to Pharaoh, let my people go. And Pharaoh says no, and they send plagues. And then he says, okay, and then he changes his mind. And then there's the parting of the Red Sea, and the people of Israel are led out of slavery. And they're led to a particular place, the Promised Land. And I think it's helpful for us to get a picture of that. And a map gives us a great picture of what happens. Let's start with the same map and get a little context. Here's that map of Africa that we were talking about. And Ghana's right over here. There's Accra. This is where the primary journey in the Old Testament takes place. Zoom in one more time. Here is the country of Egypt, and here is the capital of Egypt, Cairo, and Alexander, and this is where the people of Israel were enslaved. This is where the Promised Land is. This is where Jerusalem is, the country of Israel. And so this journey is the journey that is the picture of the whole Old Testament, God leading people from slavery into freedom. Now, I wanted to figure out how long that would take. And so I go to not Google Maps, Apple Maps. And you know they have that little thing where you can press walk or ride your bike or drive a car. And so I said, how long would it take to walk from here to here? And look at that. It gave me the exact answer. 7 days and 35 minutes to walk from Egypt to the Promised Land. Now, if you know anything about this story, you know that it took a heck of a lot longer for the people than 7 days and 35 minutes. In fact, it took 40 years. 40 years for a journey that should have taken 7 days. And therein lies the beginning of our learning today, that all of us are on a journey. And most of the time, we think that the journey is going to be simple. Like, if I'm going to go from here to there, this is my pathway. Next slide. I just go, whoop. That's what it's going to look like. But that's not at all what their journey looked like. Maps sometimes tell the story. As best I can figure, if I was going to trace their journey, it wouldn't look like this. It would look like this. This is the journey that the people of Israel took, and it took them 40 years. And there's a lot for us to learn about a journey like this. Now, why am I showing you all the maps today? I'm showing you the maps because you have a map. I have a map. Our spiritual journeys have a map, and they are instructive in terms of what God is doing and where we are going. David has a map. And the part of the map of David that I'm going to talk about today is one we would rather skip over. It's the squiggly line part of his journey. And it is part of our journey as well. But remember, we're going to look at David's map, but David's not the point. David points to Jesus, and Jesus is the point. And so David has a map. David's map, if we were going to look at it, begins in Bethlehem. There was another child born in Bethlehem. Maybe you've heard of him. His name was Jesus. David points to Jesus. David, born in Bethlehem, and he has a high point where he defeats Goliath. That's supposed to be Goliath there. I drew a little stick figure, put a little red thing through him. That's where David defeats Goliath. And things are going well at the beginning of his journey. But as I mentioned before, the previous king, King Saul, is not thrilled about David taking over, even though God has told Saul David's going to be the new king. Saul thinks, I will put a stop to that. Fighting on the other side of God, never a good idea. But David feels the brunt of this. And right after the peak of his story, we find him go into a season, a segment of the journey where he's running for his life. He is actually Saul is trying to kill him, and David loses all his status, all his friends, all his family, all his safety, and he's running for his life. This is how bad it gets. In 1 Samuel 21, verse 10, it says this: that day, David fled from Saul, because he's trying to kill him, and went to Achish, king of Gath. Now, that probably doesn't mean anything to anybody. It didn't to me. But when you look it up on a map, it tells a story. And so here's where Gath is. David starts in Jerusalem. So he won the battle with Goliath, goes back to Jerusalem, not safe for him there. And look at where he runs. He runs to Gath. And Gath is in Philistia. And if you're putting the puzzle pieces together in your mind, Philistines are what the people are called who live in Philistia, and that's who Goliath represented. So David says, it's safer for me to go live with the enemy that I just defeated than to stay back here in Jerusalem. Now, David miscalculated because he thought that they wouldn't recognize him. He would just blend in and hide out for a little while till things maybe blew over. Well, he's recognized immediately. And he's brought to the king, and so he panics, and he creates this elaborate plan to save himself. You can read it, the rest of chapter 21. We're not going to read it together today. But David decides he's going to convince the king that he's insane, that he's lost his mind. And so he acts crazy. And the king, I'm not making this up, it's in chapter 21, says to his servants, why did you bring me one more crazy person? I have plenty already. I don't need one more crazy person. Get rid of this guy. And so that's the way David is spared in Gath. And he runs from Gath to this cave in Adullam. And I'll draw a picture of it here. He goes from Gath back to a cave in Adullam. And if you're paying close attention, you'll notice that that's almost exactly the same place where he defeated Goliath, where he had his greatest victory. It comes full circle, and he hasn't really gone anywhere. And now he's back at the same place, but he's at a low point. He's by himself in a cave. Now, there's more than one cave in this part of David's journey. In fact, the cave is going to be an important piece of our puzzle today. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and assume that you know what that feels like. That most people, if we're at all introspective, have been in some caves in our lives. That you didn't think you would end up there. You're not sure how to get out of it. It feels alone. It feels dark. It feels like you don't have many options. Yeah, cave. And so David flees from hometown, flees from Gath, ends up by himself in a cave. And that's where I want us to learn in fact, if we kept going, David's next several years, 3 to 5 years, starting in that cave, one cave to the next, would look pretty familiar. It would look like this. He goes all the way down to Moab to drop off his parents. He is on the run for years. And that's where I want us to learn the first lesson of this part of David's journey. And the first lesson is this. The path, that squiggly line, is the plan. It's not that the path gets us to the plan. The path is the plan. And you and I, remember, have a map. And the path that it tells, it reveals, is part of God's plan. Now, here's the rub for me. That when I think of the path of Reid's spiritual growth journey, this is how, in my mind, this is how it looks. I start at point A, and I grow to point B, and I look like Jesus. But the problem with that is, here's the path of the man after God's own heart. His looks like that. Why in the world would I think that mine was going to be a straight line? But yet, I'm surprised when my path feels like this. I don't think I'm alone. And the first thing that we've got to learn is that the path is the plan. The destination is not even as important as who we are when we get there. God's more interested in that. In other words, if God showed me a picture of who this was, who he's making me to be, a version of me that was more courageous than I am, more patient, more tender, more loving, all of it, and said, would you like to be that version of you? I'd say every time, yes. The problem is that sometimes I wouldn't sign up for the path that gets me there. Now, look, to be sure, there are some detours and some dead ends that I've chosen to take that I didn't need to, that have made it a slightly more difficult part of the journey. And that's on me. Those are my decisions. But the great thing about our God and the message of the path, the God of the roundabout way, in his sovereignty, uses even my bad decisions to make me into the person he's always known I could become. And I've always hoped that I'd become. And so often I can't see the whole map, and it's confusing to me. And often I wouldn't sign up for the next leg if God did show me what it was going to look like. Because We're just not as smart as we think we are when it comes to understanding what's going on in our path. I'll give you a trick question. What's the fastest distance between 2 points? How many people said straight line? I told you it was a trick question. No. If I said the shortest distance between 2 points, that would be straight line. I said the fastest distance, and it turns out that the fastest distance between 2 points, especially if it's in 3D and gravity has anything to do with it, is not a straight line. It's called the brachistochrome curve. I looked it up. Had my math teacher buddy check me on it. It's why they build roller coasters with dips in them, because momentum has a part to play in the speed of going from point A to point B. So in my mind, the shortest distance, the fastest distance is straight line. And in God's wisdom, he knows you won't even make it. You'll run out of gas halfway unless you take the path that I lay out for you. And so most of us have a dip in or 2 or 3 in our path. And it's important. It's an important part of the process. David flees to the cave. This is a dip. And you know what you should never say when you're in the dip? Well, it can't get any worse. Don't say that. That's a bad idea. And maybe, I don't know if David said that or not. But I got to imagine he's alone in a cave, and we'll find out in just a second. He continues to pray. That's a good thing to do when you're in a cave spot. Continue to pray to God. But what happens next is probably not what he would have signed up for. At the beginning of chapter 22, this is what we read. David left Gath, remember, acted like he was crazy, escaped to the cave of Adullam, almost exactly the place where he defeated Goliath. And when his brothers and his father's household heard about it, they went down to him there. Oh. Now, let me just pause before we go to verse 2. Because if what you're picturing at this moment is a family reunion where everybody sort of, holds hands and sways, you got the wrong picture. In fact, one of the last pictures that we had of David and his brothers were his brothers saying how useless and worthless and arrogant he was. They did not hold him in high esteem. And now we can imagine that King Saul is trying to kill David. He can't find David. Guess who the next people on the list might be? Yeah. So David's alone. He prays to God. And God brings the people that probably are the least likely he would pray for. The family shows up. And then it doesn't stop there. Look at verse 2. Here's the rest of the crowd that God brings to David in the cave. All those who were in distress or in debt or discontented gathered around him. How's that for a group? And he became their commander. About 400 men were with him. Our friends in the recovery programs, you might know, we have a really flourishing and vibrant relationship with recovery ministry at Crossroads. And one of the phrases that from AA is restless, irritable, and discontent. And I think, oh my gosh, that's exactly who God brought to David when he was in this cave situation. It's sometimes I think David's situation would be described. Your problem was you were in a cave alone until you prayed. And now your problem is you're in a cave and you're not alone. And the people that God brought to you are not the people that you would want to be in a cave with. But you know what happens? Because the path, even the dip, is part of the plan. It says there were about 400 of these disgruntled people. And they turned into the core of the group that's referred to as David's mighty men. And this little ragtag band of discontents becomes this critical part in the extending of God's kingdom and David's reign. That happens in the dip. So the path is the plan. It's not a way to get to the plan. It is the plan. And then secondly, the cave is the place. The cave is the place where God does some of his best work. David goes from cave to cave. There is so much that happens in a cave. Too often, I think, when we find ourselves in a cave spot, we want to get out of it as quickly as we can. I understand that. I talked to someone last week who said, look, I know God uses these times in my life. I'm just ready to move on. I want to learn my lesson and move on. I get that. But sometimes the cave is the place. I mentioned David wrote half of the Psalms. The book of Psalms, 150 of them, David wrote half of them. And 8 of them, we know, he wrote specifically from a cave. 2 of them from this cave. Let me read you a couple of the things that David wrote from the cave. Psalm 142. He writes, listen to my cry. I'm in desperate need. Rescue me from those who pursue me, for they are too strong for me. That makes sense. Set me free from my prison. He's talking about his cave, that I may praise your name. Then the righteous will gather about me because of your goodness to me. God, get me out of this place, and then I will be able to praise you. But then look at Psalm 57, also probably from this cave. Have mercy on me, my God, have mercy on me, for I take refuge in you. I will take refuge in the shadow of your wings until the disaster has passed. That makes sense. But skip down to verse 7. David writes this, my heart, O God, is steadfast. My heart is steadfast. I'll sing and make music. Awake, my soul. Awake, harp and lyre. I will awaken the dawn. What's he saying? I'm going to wake up singing. In a cave? Yep. I will praise you, Lord. Among all the nations, I'll sing of you among all the people, for great is your love, reaching to the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches to the skies. Oh, and by the way, reaches to a cave. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth. Do you know where all the earth includes? Caves. And David prays this, sings this, worships this way while he's there. The path is the plan, but sometimes the cave is the place that God does some of his best work. Sometimes that's the only place that I'll sit still long enough. Sometimes that's the only place that I'm humble enough, that I let my guard down, that I don't have any other options enough for God to do his best work in me. Doesn't mean I got to love it. Yay, cave. That's not the point. It means to notice when I'm in that spot that I'm not alone. That I am not alone. That gets us to the last piece. The time, the path is the plan, the cave is the place, and the time is now. And later, but the time is now. And David figures that out. That what he has to do is be obedient to God in this moment. You can't be obedient to God in any other moment than the one you have right now. Your obedience now will change future moments, but you can't be obedient in future moments now. You can only be obedient now. And so David figured that out. And he was still God's anointed even when he's in a cave. This sounds like a joke. When is a king not a king? A king in a cave? Is a king in a cave still a king? Yeah. When was David God's anointed? During that wiggly waggly journey. The whole time. Are you connecting the dots? When is a child of God not loved and protected? Always. In a cave? You betcha. You and I have the ability to be obedient to God wherever we are right now. Here's David in another cave a couple of years later in 1 Samuel 24. Imagine this. He's been on the run in that squiggly, squaggly line, and he ends up in a cave And he's hiding with some of his men in the cave. And Saul, who's pursuing him, comes, and the Bible says he had to relieve himself. And so he went into a cave. All I want you to picture there is he's in a vulnerable state. You don't need to picture any more than that. He couldn't be more vulnerable, Saul. And David's men make an assumption on his behalf. This is the time where we can end all of the running, all the fleeing. This is the time that we can come out of the cave. It must be. And so this is what they say to him. This is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I'll give you your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish. Then David crept up unnoticed behind Saul and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. That would not be what I was expecting if I was some of David's men hiding back in the cave. And you got to imagine, I like to imagine if I was there, what would it be like? And so somebody didn't have a front row seat and is trying to peek over, but be quiet. And David gets all the way up there with the knife. And then you can't really see, what happened? And somebody says, he cut off the corner of his robe. And you think, what? That's not the plan. That's not going to help anything. And yet, it did. Because David knew that I don't know what's going to happen if I don't kill Saul. I do know what's going to happen if I do kill Saul. I'll be the one who killed Saul. So I'm going to leave it up to God. And this is what he says. As the old saying goes, I don't know where the old saying's from. From evildoers come evil deeds. So my hand will not touch you. God's presence is with you now. God's plan is revealed over time. And the path is the plan. The cave is off in the place. And your time is now. But David's not the point. Remember that? David's not the point. David points to Jesus. Jesus is the point. Jesus has a map. Can you picture what the map of Jesus looks like? He left his Father's throne above, came to earth, entered a cave. Jesus, his path is the plan. The incarnation is his plan. And the cave is the place. You remember when Jesus was in a cave? After the crucifixion. They rolled the big stone in front of it. They thought, we won. He's done. Jesus does some of his best work in caves. And if you're putting the analogy together, if Jesus is the king in the cave, who does that make us? We're all the disgruntled, disappointed, in-debt people that show up and go, here we are. And he goes, perfect. I'm going to turn you in to my mighty kingdom warriors. And that's what he's doing. Sometimes it takes the path of the roundabout way. But today is the day that we can choose to be obedient to our king. When is a king not a king? He's always a king. And today is our day that we can be obedient to him. I'm going to pray that wherever you are in your journey, be it a cave or a mountaintop, that Jesus will remind you that you are never alone and you are never unloved. Let me pray. Father, thank you for pursuing us. Thank you for meeting us wherever we are. Thank you for the promise that you will never leave us or forsake us. I pray that you would speak to every heart who's listening to this message and reassure them, remind them of your promise that you are our King, alive and well. You are establishing your kingdom and inviting us to expand it with you. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.